been a difficult year for a lot of people.
Part of me wished to witness that they were alive. I want to see my students alive.
So you're always playing for your alums, and now you're playing for people that have lost their lives that were part of us. They're part of the student.
Everybody is on their own healing journey, and that looks different for every person.
Trying to take care of yourself is the best and most important thing, I think.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are all Spartans. Many of us graduated from here. We work here.
What February 13 will continue to mean, it will be a moment that continues to echo into our future. And we will continue to be a resilient community, not just for ourselves, but as that beacon to others.
1 year ago, terror came to campus. A lone gunman took 3 innocent lives and a collective sense of safety.
This is a live look at the Sparty statue on Michigan State's campus, where later this evening a candlelight vigil will be held to remember the students who died in the mass shooting at MSU. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our special coverage of Spartans Remember.
Over the next half hour, we will take a look at how Michigan State, our community, has been changed by the events from a year ago. The terror now replaced by resolve to make sure no more students have to endure this type of senseless violence.
Tonight, we take a look at the security measures now in place to make campus safer.
Plus, new laws go into effect today to keep guns out of the hands of people who could harm themselves or others.
And how the campus community is using this day to make positive change.
But we want to begin with remembering the 3 Michigan State University students who were killed in the shooting a year ago. Brian Frazier was a sophomore from Grosse Pointe and the chapter president of the Phi Delta Theta fraternity.
Ariel Anderson was a junior who wanted to become a doctor. And Alexandria Werner, also a junior, was a star athlete in high school.
5 other students were shot, some still facing life-altering injuries. And staff and students lost the sense of security in the place they called home.
The man who kept the campus informed a year ago was Michigan State University Police Chief Chris Rosman. It was his job that night to give timely updates about the threat and the investigation that followed. He's now putting new security measures in place, hoping to prevent a future shooting. I sat down with him to talk about that night.
MSU units, I got a shot fired complaint at Berkey Hall.
A night of terror and uncertainty on campus. Chris Rosman was at the podium keeping everyone up to date as the response to the mass shooting unfolded and the investigation started.
This truly has been a nightmare that we are living tonight.
It's hard to think about. It's hard to look back on. Even though I was talking to the cameras, I knew I was talking to the people who were impacted, and that was students who may be hiding on campus. It may be parents who were fearful of the situation that their child was in.
Rosman was the calm in the midst of a scary storm, unlike any other he's experienced.
Not only as a father, but as an alum, as a Spartan who's been on campus for a majority of my life, it was difficult to really understand the magnitude of the event.
An event which lasted roughly 4 hours, with police working to catch a gunman, people in the community sheltering in place, and a lot of confusion. Rosman says thanks to a regional partnership, local authorities were ready to respond.
And that includes training with our fire EMS service to enter an area that may not be necessarily safe, to render immediate life-saving aid to people who are impacted. And that's what happened in this case, and lives were saved because of that.
The massive response revealing ways law enforcement can improve.
I don't think anybody could have ever anticipated the amount of officers and first responders and helpers that came from all over the state of Michigan with good intent that wanted to help in the effort. And it's commendable, and we appreciate that. At the same time, it does become a tad overwhelming in terms of just resource accountability within that incident command system.
A third-party review released in October gave the police department a blueprint with ideas on how to upgrade security and streamline the response. Since the shooting, the university has added new locks on doors and put all 600 cameras on campus on the same platform in control of the police department.
We now have people who are monitoring our cameras 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, along with our access control system, along with the ability to send out mass notification and mass messaging with our MSU alert system.
The police department is building its new security operations center, which should be finished this year. When it's completed, they'll consider upgrades, including gun detection software on all cameras.
They're important, but what I'll point out is it's only one layer of our layered approach to our security portfolio on campus. And so our entire security portfolio on campus consists of things that you can see and things that you can't see.
Eyes on a campus, open to the community, a challenge for those who protect it every day and every night.
We are relieved to no longer have an active threat on campus, while we realize that there is so much healing that will need to take place.
It's been a difficult year for a lot of people, and what I'll point out is that everybody is on their own healing journey, and that looks different for every person.
Chief Rosman is giving his staff the time to heal and the choice to work on the anniversary of the shooting or spend it at home with loved ones. He says most plan to be on campus today, including him.
The locations of the February 13th, 2023 shootings are back open. Berkey Hall started hosting classes again on January 8th of this year. The specific lecture hall where 2 students were killed remains closed. MSU officials say they hope to renovate and repurpose that space. Some flowers were left outside Berkey Hall today to honor the memory of the students who died in the shooting.
Gathering spaces at the MSU Union reopened 7 weeks after the shooting. Stores, meeting spaces, and study spots welcomed back students last April. The Union also hosted handwritten messages of support to the Spartan community. Flowers also being added outside the Union today.
Where were you the night of the shooting? It's a question that's been asked thousands of times over the past year. I spoke with 2 MSU students who were on campus 1 year ago tonight about what they experienced that fateful night.
It was just absolute chaos.
It was an unsurreal experience. It was unimaginable.
I was screaming for you. I couldn't find you. It was like totally dark. The alarm was going off. You just heard everyone kind of screaming and running.
Stephanie Rao and Aiden Girding recalling the night when mass shooting terror hit close to home. For Aiden, it was very close. He lived at Campbell Hall, right across the street from the MSU Student Union where one student was killed. He was at the building's front steps about to walk inside for a bite to eat.
What did you see?
I heard enough.
Aiden never made it inside because at that very moment, police cars pulled up and chaos erupted.
Run! Kids ran out, and it sounded like a lot of almost like trays dropping. It was really heavy.
And then when they said that the guy was across the road at Holmes, that's when everyone kind of started to panic.
Stephanie Rao was across campus at the IM East building, getting ready to watch a friend play basketball when the lockdown alerts came in. The shelter in place was shattered when someone yelled, "He's breaking in, run out."
That moment when they told us that he was in and we had to run, that was the moment that I was like, I actually might die.
Stephanie would later find out the person people saw at the gym door was a plainclothes police officer with their gun drawn. But the fear she experienced on that day is still with Stephanie to this day.
If I'm sitting in a classroom that, faces forwards and someone comes in from behind and I hear the door, the initial thought in my mind is, when am I going to have to run?
Stephanie says she is happy with the security upgrades on campus over the past year, but regaining a sense of security is just going to take more time and healing. For Aiden, mental healing is a work in progress.
I'm doing okay. Therapy helps, and, trying to take care of yourself is the best and most important thing, I think.
His plan for tonight, 1 year later, is simple.
I'm going to surround myself with people that I love, so I'm kind of grateful that that I'm still kind of around for. So that's kind of my plan.
Stephanie Rouse says her plan is to get together with the people she lived through it with, helping each other through the emotions of this night.
In the wake of the shooting, the Spartans Strong Fund was created. More than $2.5 million was raised to help with the healing and recovery. The university says a quarter of the fund will pay for mental health services. Some of the money will be used to build a permanent memorial. University spokesman Dan Olson says the fund shows how Spartans around the world are there for each other in times of need.
This was the world embracing our Spartan community in the time that we needed it most, and we couldn't be more thankful for that support and generosity from those who contributed to the fund.
Spartans from 14 different countries outside the U.S. donated to the Spartan Strong Fund.
That effort to give back continues today. Classes were canceled on campus to give students and staff a chance to make the community a better and brighter place. Our Riley Connell is live on campus right now with a look at the Day of Giving. Riley?
Yeah, David, the Spartan statue actually looks much like it did a year ago today, with some of the flowers starting to pile up at Sparty's feet. This is a day of remembrance and also a day of healing. But many of the people I spoke with earlier say healing looks different for everybody. While students and staff may not be on the same page emotionally, here on campus they were able to get together and show support for their fellow Spartans.
The biggest way that I can heal is by talking to others and seeing how I can help them. I am always a call away, text away for anybody that needs anything from me.
A day for healing, reflection, and support. 1 year after tragedy changed the Michigan State University campus, students and staff are spending their time giving back.
Our students really love doing service work. I know, because that's my everyday job, is to get them out into nonprofits and seeing the importance of that. So I think they feel good doing for others. At the same time, they're able to reflect with their friends.
Activities of kindness and service spread out between the Hanna Community Center and the MSU International Center. Whether it's bagging lunches for kids in need or writing a note of support to a friend who's struggling on a day heavy with emotion. MSU student leaders say it's about meeting people where they're at.
It's just mainly trying to emphasize there's no one way to really go about this, and that everyone's feelings are valid and everyone's emotions are valid throughout this.
A Spartan community that's come together to remember the lives lost and help each other heal, no matter how long it takes.
That's never going to end next week. That's not going to end in a month or a year. We're still going to be feeling these feelings we've always felt.
MSU plans to continue healing events through the remainder of the week. Some of those events include self-care activities and mental health counselors available for students through the week as well. An advocacy day has also been planned for Thursday at the state capitol. Live on MSU's campus, Riley Connell, News 10.
And for those still dealing with trauma from February 13th, there is help. Free counseling services are now being offered by Common Ground's new United Resiliency Center, a nonprofit helping people still experiencing stress from the shooting.
This is for those who are impacted by the event, and so this is their center. You don't have to be at your worst. You can come in at any time.
The Resiliency Center provides free resources like victim advocacy, counseling, and support groups.
While law enforcement is trained in how to respond to an emergency, for many people impacted by the mass shooting, it was their very first time encountering violence. That includes MSU Humanities professor Marco Diaz-Munoz. He was teaching a class in Berkey Hall when terror walked in. I sat down with him recently to get a sense of how his life has transformed over the past year.
Yeah, I took all these pills to try to knock myself out and not think, just not think, not be conscious, so I didn't have to remember or think what I had seen, what I had witnessed.
What Professor Marco Diaz-Munoz witnessed was a gunman entering his Monday night Cuban literature class at Berkey Hall, opening fire and killing 2 of his students. A night that turned into a nightmare and an act of senseless violence that's been replaced by action.
Immediately after the tragedy, I felt it would be a greater nightmare to be alone thinking than to be engaged in what I know.
And what he knows is teaching. So Professor Diaz turned down MSU's offer to take the rest of the semester off. He says he felt compelled to physically see his students again.
Part of me wished to witness that they were alive. I want to see my students alive. And
22 students who survived the shooting showed up at class 1 week later in a different building, and along with Professor Diaz, they all finished the semester together.
When you experience something like that, the people you experience it with become, in some ways, your family.
He says there were plenty of hugs and tears on that first day back and on the last day of the semester.
I don't think I'll ever forget them. In my decades, not years, my decades of teaching, they'll always be in my mind, in my memory, in my heart.
But Professor Diaz says his heart won't allow him to go back to Berkey, a wound still too hard to face. He says he suffered an episode of post-traumatic stress when he unintentionally found himself driving by.
And the last time I had seen that building at night, looking like that, it was with ambulances and policemen, and you know, and I was there witnessing this horrible tragedy. So it was, you know, challenging and upsetting to drive by Berkey.
Mental health counselors, compassionate colleagues, a caring campus and mid-Michigan community. Professor Diaz says they all helped him deal with this tragedy, and so did pulling weeds. Oh, I see them. They're all on, yeah. Planting flowers in his backyard last spring and teaching a class in the summer helped keep him emotionally grounded. But as a new school semester returned in January, so did the anxiety, teaching the same class at night in the middle of winter.
So all those things reminded me of the tragedy. And a big one was, how can I walk into a classroom of 50 students and start the class with a syllabus and pretend that they don't know who I am?
Who he is a college professor who survived the unthinkable and deals with the regret of surviving it all.
What happened in my classroom is not an accident. It is something that is becoming part of what we live.
He has forgiven the man who pulled the trigger, calling him the product of a broken society. Professor Diaz blames it on a lack of funding for education, mental health services, and minorities being marginalized.
Even if we shut our doors and say, you know, I don't want to hear the news, I don't want to hear about it. Well, if you don't want to hear the news and you don't want to think anything about it, maybe the next news are going to be about you.
These days, Professor Diaz says he surrounds himself with symbols of joy, like the Christmas tree he still has up in February, full of shining lights that represent the light of life that still shines within him.
So even in the midst of the hardest things, I can still say life is a blessing. Life is a gift. I have had a second chance.
And Professor Diaz says tonight he will attend one of the vigils remembering those we lost 1 year ago.
The Ingham County Sheriff's Office has new equipment to better respond to threats of active violence. The sheriff says it's a direct result of the rise in mass shootings across the country. The Sheriff's Office was already working on a plan to equip every patrol car with the right tools to help deputies get into a building and stop a threat even before the mass shooting at MSU. A Sheriff's Office lieutenant says it's all about making sure they're ready to respond to any crisis.
Many cops said they didn't have the right tools, and that's something that we want to make sure that we're never in a position where we can't do our job or protect someone because we don't have the right equipment.
Now, this new equipment includes things like a telescoping ladder, breaching tools, and a bulletproof shield. Unfortunately, what happened at Michigan State is not an isolated incident.
According to the Gun Violence Archive, 7 other mass shootings have happened at schools and universities in the past year. Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, Maryland, Texas, Nevada, and Iowa, each seeing one take place. The most recent happening in Perry, Iowa on January 4th.
When the shooting happened on the campus of UNLV, Michigan State reached out in a show of support. painting the rock red and black, the school's colors, with the message UNLV strong, along with how many more. Today, the rock painted with the message Spartans together, along with the initials of Ariel Anderson, Brian Frazier, and Alexandria Verner. That message aimed at showing the strength of the MSU community on this difficult day.
After the shooting on campus, a push for new gun regulations. Students at Michigan State held rallies at the state capitol, calling for lawmakers to prevent future violence. Today, some of those laws go into effect. The new red flag law requires a person deemed to be a threat to themselves or others to turn in their guns to local law enforcement. Within 14 days, a hearing can be scheduled to determine if they pose a risk.
We've had shootings where some of this probably could have been prevented. So this doesn't mean that we want to take people's weapons away. That's the last thing we want to do. However, it is going to keep people safe.
Once a red flagged person has their guns removed, the Attorney General says it's up to local law enforcement to determine where they can receive treatment.
Painful but proud as Michigan State University's interim president Teresa Woodruff prepares to hand over the reins to a new president in March, she looks back on a painful year of healing and resiliency. I sat down with her to talk about her leadership through it all.
In our collective grief, hope, and resolve, we are truly a Spartan nation.
Tragedy, trauma, and a test of leadership. Just 3 months after becoming Michigan State University's interim president, Teresa Woodruff found herself navigating a difficult journey.
As our presence here tonight demonstrates, there is comfort and hope in the community of the bereaved, for we are not alone.
And she was not alone. Leaders who have experienced mass shootings reached out just moments after the attack.
The Virginia Tech president called me, and the mayor from Highland Park in Chicago called me right away. So I had people calling to give me a sensibility of what leadership was going to look like in that moment. And that was very pivotal to me in my thinking in those early hours.
Pivotal in the hours and months that followed. How to lead a grieving campus community.
We have, over the last year, developed ways to wrap our warm academic arms around everyone, which means those most affected by that event on that evening, but we're all affected. And I see the coming together that we had on Spartan Sunday last year. Oh, see, I can't, I don't know if I can do it.
You're human. She says it hurts to look back and admits, as a leader, she's been focused on helping everyone move forward.
We've taken the input from the community to bring wisdom and discernment to those kinds of decisions that have changed some of our daily behaviors, but to allow for this broad, open public space to continue to feel to be that warm, welcome environment, but also with measures of safety that I think are prudent.
From public safety enhancements to helping those directly impacted. Last April, the university set up the Office for Resource and Support Coordination to help people heal.
But knowing that not all of us are on the same path, and those on the same path may not be at the same point in their emotional thoughtfulness.
This leader has spent the last year learning about resilience. Spartans showing their strength by learning from and leaning on each other.
That is one of the outcomes of what February 13 will continue to mean. It will be a moment that continues to echo into our future, and we will continue to be a resilient community, not just for ourselves, but as that beacon to others as we continue to help others through these times of this kind of tragedies and many others.
Interim President Woodruff says she will be there to help other leaders who find themselves dealing with a similar tragedy. Tonight, she's on campus finding comfort among her Spartan Strong community. Well, someone who took a big role in campus healing was Spartan basketball head coach Tom Izzo.
Coach Izzo's son Stephen called him to let him know about the chaos on campus. Coach Izzo spoke with students in the days following the shooting and says he's making sure to pause and reflect on what happened 1 year ago.
You know, I'm going to make sure I do. And I say that because I think the problem is we're not doing enough pausing on these things. You know, we all know life keeps moving on, but when significant things happen, that we should find a way to change the world so they don't happen again. I don't think we do it enough, so I'm going to pause a little longer and count my blessings.
Coach Izzo has tried to stay in contact with the students who were injured and survived. In fact, he recently had shooting victim John Howe at a game at the Breslin Center. Howe, now in a wheelchair, posed for a picture with the team in the locker room after the game. In the weeks that followed February 13th, hundreds of items were left at memorials across campus. Flowers, stuffed animals, and more covered the ground around the Spartan statue, the rock, and the buildings where the shootings took place. Over the past year, the MSU Museum collected those items for preservation. News 10's Aaron Bowling shows us where those items are now and how they will be used in the future.
The items are being stored in climate-controlled spaces all across campus. Due to the nature of the items and the sheer size of the collection, they're taking their time to make sure it's handled in a trauma-informed way.
So for my team, one of the most important things for me, and as it relates to a timeline, is just making sure people know when and that they can step back. We'll get through this when the time is right together.
Cataloging, digitizing, preserving, and protecting. Shortly after one of the darkest days on Michigan State University's campus, over 1,000 items were collected and archived at the MSU Museum.
Who knows down the road what may happen with the collections. I mean, there's a lot of very personal stuff that was left, including letters addressed to some of the students who were impacted by this as well as others.
Working with those most directly impacted, MSU has created a planning committee to facilitate a permanent memorial on campus. It's one of many remembrance efforts, alongside the museum's collection and a bench donated from the Associated Students of MSU.
The bench is with MSU Shadows Wood, and it will be installed right near Berkey. The bench will be installed, looks like it will be before graduation.
Remembering how time seemed to stop following the shooting, the museum says there's no telling how or when the collection will be made available to the public. They typically plan exhibits up to 5 years in advance, deciding what story to tell, the tone to use, and what items will be included. Very hard decisions to make for an exhibit so raw and so close to home.
When you're handling this content, this material, you're also kind of re-traumatizing yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all Spartans. Many of us graduated from here, we work here. You know, it's hard to decouple that.
If you'd like to contribute to the planning of MSU's permanent memorial, we have a link to the university's survey on our website, wilx.com. In East Lansing, Aaron Bowling, News 10.
And those memories aimed at remembering the lives forever changed.
And tonight, MSU will hold a gathering near the Sparty statue, a short program that will include a moment of silence and the ringing of the bells at Beaumont Tower. It'll begin around 8 o'clock. Berkey Hall and the MSU Union will also be lit up in green. News 10 will provide live coverage of tonight's remembrance on WILX.com and our News 10 streaming channels. Now, that cold February night a year ago, today was replaced with resolve. Resolve that terror should not and cannot be tolerated here or anywhere.
Tonight, we remember Brian, Ariel, and Alexandria. Their promising lives taken too soon. But their impact lives on today as the campus community unites.
And we thank our first responders who protect our communities and the teachers who inspire.
Thank you for joining us this evening for our special coverage. Take care.